Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Angela, and I've been seeing this tag going around for quite a while now, and I was never going to do it because I'm not into, I want to be into astrology, but I'm too lazy to dive into it, if that makes sense. There's other areas I'd rather dive into, like past lives or medium mystic stuff. Just never, I've always was fascinated with astrology when I was a kid. When I was a teenager, I just never pulled the plug, jumped in, dove deep, really, and I don't really have a desire to now, even though I say I do. But this was it's one deck for, hashtag one deck for each season, or each sign. It's a VR to Steph I'm not even going to pronounce it because it's all in French, so I'm going to leave the link below. She did leave a couple of keywords for each sign, and I am going off of those keywords just because I didn't even know. All I knew it was about Virgo, which is what I am. I didn't know anything else about the other signs. I know a couple people have, well, technically I know a couple other signs just because it's friends or family members I've had that I'm like, makes sense why they're the way they are. And I find it interesting because I'm a Virgo and I was born almost 3 months premature. I should have been a Sagittarius. So I find that interesting that I am the picture of a Virgo. Like I have all the traits, the good, bad, the ugly of a Virgo. So I just find that very interesting that I wasn't even supposed to be a Virgo. But yeah, I'll leave the link below. And she started off with Aries, which is rebel and spontaneous. And for some reason, the first thing that came to my mind was the Bonfire Tarot. And then I got to thinking, I'm like, what sign is Aries? What element does Aries go with? And turns out it's a fire sign. So I've actually looked up more about the astrological symbols and signs, more trying to do this tag than I have for anything. So I did pick the Bonfire Tarot, which is crazy. Because I'm just like, it's a fire sign. As soon as I realized Aries was a fire sign, I'm like, yes, this is the deck. I'm glad my intuition was guiding me to choose this deck. This is the mass market version. It's very glossy. It's by Gabby Angus West. Published by Schiffer. Should have known. Cardstock. It's just like the, oh my god, it's just like the other one I trimmed. But it is a beautiful, beautiful deck. I just really haven't worked with it a whole lot just because it's so busy. But I did watch Lisa Pappas' channel yesterday that she did a full deep dive of it. I'm like, so she's made me want to work with it more, I think. And I bought this knowing one day I would work with it. I just knew I wasn't going to work with it at the time that I bought it. So maybe now it's not quite the time, but it's closer to the time to work with this deck. It's beautiful. It's stunning. And that is my Aries sign. And everybody's like, everybody's that I've watched, the energy of the deck is this. And I'm like, well, I don't know what the energy of the signs feels like. So, except for Virgo. So, I didn't even know they were, like, what signs were fire signs and what signs were water and all that. I did know Pisces was a water sign because I have too many people in my family that's Pisces. So, that was Aries for the fire sign for the keywords rebel and spontaneous, which immediately came to mind for that deck. So for the second one, we have Taurus. I have a child born under the sign of Taurus. Grounded and earthy, which I assumed would be Virgo, but we'll get to that. It's not. And I actually did write beside each symbol what the element was. So the Taurus is earth as well as Virgo is. So I find that interesting. And I chose the Herb Crafters Tarot. I had like 3 decks that I wanted to go through, and I went through all of them, and this one still won out. This is published by U.S. Games. I love the cardstock on this. These are the bags. And I'm like, what else could you possibly have for a grounded and earthy deck than the Herb Crafters? I mean, this card is the reason I bought this deck right here. It's so beautiful. That is the 9 of Water, or 9 of Cups. Peach. And it's beautiful. If I turn the box around. And then this is my second favorite card in here. The Magician with the sunflower, of course. Beautiful. And there's just there's so many plants, so many herbs, so many, this is the ultimate, to me, grounded or earthy deck. It's just beautiful. Beautiful. And it's already very humid today. We've got like 2 days of nothing but rain, and it was like 60 degrees yesterday. I'm like, it's June. Crazy. That's beautiful. And that's beautiful. And there's birds everywhere right now because it's been raining so much. We've had 2 days of just rain. Like every other hour it would rain. Crazy. And it's supposed to be nice and sunny today and like close to 100 degrees. And it's very humid right now, but there's complete cloud cover. There's no sun. I'm wearing the shades because even with the cloud cover, it seems to hurt my eyes more than if the sun was out, believe it or not. So yeah, this is the Herb Crafters Tarot. I love it. It's to me, the ultimate herbal, grounded and earthy deck. And it also gives you little rituals you can do with each herb or spice or whatever it is, which I find very fascinating. So next we have Gemini. Duality is the word. And this is when I was watching her video, this was the first deck I thought of in all of these decks. And it is the Tarot of Oppositions. Because it's a Los Scarabero publication. It's Perluca Zizi and Michael or Michelle D'Elizio is the creators of this deck. These are the backs, gorgeous. But the reason I chose this as my duality deck is because you have the upright meanings and then the reverse meaning all on the front of the card. So that's why this is my duality deck, because there's that duality in every single card of light and dark, light and shadow, good and evil, whatever you want to choose to say it. And I think that's beautiful. And I really have not worked with this deck as much as I thought I would. And look how he's got like really dark hair and the flowers are wilted in the top, and then he's got like blonde hair and he's full of life in the bottom, and the sun's out. I find that interesting. But this is also the first deck. I don't care, because the backs are reversible, I don't care if they come up upside down or not. Is the first and only deck I use I read reversals with. I haven't read, like I said, I haven't read with it as much as I've wanted to, because at the time I got this, was having so many decks coming in, but, and they're slidey, they're trying to slide right off the table. But yeah, this was literally the first deck I thought of when I saw the tag. This was the first deck in any of the signs I came up with. I'm like, oh yeah, exactly, that deck has to be. So I just thought that was interesting. I don't know any Geminis either, so. And I did look it up, and Gemini is air. I've looked all these signs up. Like I said, I did more research doing this tag than I've done any astrological signs ever. But that is the Tarot of Oppositions for Gemini and the keyword duality. crazy. Oh my God. That was only deck 3 and we're 10 minutes in. Crazy. So for Cancer, it's sensitivity. And it is a water sign. And the only deck I could think of was my Mermaid Tarot. It is a watery deck. It's published by Llewellyn. It's by Lisa Robertson, illustrated by Julie Dillon. It's like a huge book. I love this deck. I don't use it as often as I thought I would when I got it, but I still love it. Perfect Llewellyn cardstock. These are the backs. My husband is a Cancer, and I used to laugh because I'm like, oh, he's far from sensitive, but he really is sensitive. He's a very manly, tough guy. He's an iron worker. They cuss like sailors. You know, they drink a lot of beer. That kind of person. You would have never think that they were a sensitive type of person. But when it comes to certain things, he's very sensitive. Very touchy about his family, about his wife, about his kids. If somebody like back in the day when he was drinking in bars and stuff, before we met, he got into a fight in a bar because the waitress said he stole $10 out of her change, out of her stuff, and he's like, lady, I make like such and such amount of money. I don't need your $10 that you made in tips. And kind of find out she had dropped it. Somebody found it on the floor, and they didn't even apologize to him. They wound up kicking him out because he threw a fit, because he's very all about, sorry, I dropped these in there. It's muddy on the ground. He's very fierce and protective when it comes to certain things, and being a cheat, being a liar is not one of them. And when he comes up against someone that accuses him of that, he's very sensitive in that regard. So I got to looking at this sign a little bit differently when it comes to that, because I'm like, yeah, he's a tough guy, but he is very sensitive when it comes to certain things. So that's why I chose the Mermaid Tarot. It's watery. There are darker images in this, even though it appears to be a light and fluffy, pretty deck. There's some seriousness to it as well. And that sums up my husband perfectly, honestly. So yeah, we have the Mermaid Tarot for Cancer. Sorry. Trying to get everything situated. Need a drink. I know a couple of Cancers, and they're very... The other one is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. They're sensitive about everything. They get offended over everything, and you're like, geez, this is exhausting. But, yeah. Crazy. Okay, we've moved on to Leo, which is a fire sign, which is my youngest child. The words are solar and light. And the only deck I thought of, newer in my collection, is the Oracle of the Radiant Sun, published by Red Feather. I'm getting more and more of their decks without realizing it. Comes in a 2-part box. This is the book. Everything about this says sunlight. Has the sun all over it. Has the sun on the backs. Yeah, this is the only deck I thought of. I'm like, of course it's going to be the Oracle of the Radiant Sun for the Leo. And I already knew that Leo was a fire sign because it's my youngest child. He is the living embodiment of what a Leo is. And because he's right before Virgo, I think that's why we get along more than my other son and I do, who is a Pisces, who we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, this is the deck I thought of immediately when I saw this sign. I'm like, oh, of course, it's the Oracle of the Radiant Sun. It has to be. There's no other way. Plus, this is all about astrology in this deck. I just found it quite fitting for both. So that is the Oracle of the Radiant Sun for Leo, the fire sign. Now, just a second here. Okay, so for Virgo, which is me, I chose, of course, it's an earth sign. The keywords are precision and perfection. Instead of picking precision or perfection in a tarot deck, I'm like, I don't think I have anything like that. I'm just going to pick the deck that's perfect for me, that to me is the embodiment of precision and perfection for me, the Virgo. So I picked my White Seers, which is my soul deck, published by Hay House. It's Chris Ann created it. This deck is my soul deck. It is the deck and this is a mass market version. These are the edges I did. These are the backs. And I've said before many times, if a person could be a deck, this would be me. And that's probably why I think it's so my soul deck, because it's like she took me and put it into a deck, and that's what came out was the Light Seers. It's the third tarot deck I ever bought, and I was like, I don't need another deck, but of course I bought many since then. And occasional fireworks going to go off because it is 3rd of July. But yeah, and it is an earthy deck as well. And the colors in it are beautiful. It is why are some of these upside down? It's my favorite strength ever, and that's my card of the year this year. Why are these upside down? Oh my gosh. Yeah, some of them are upside down. Weird. But this is like I said, this is the embodiment of me. It's my favorite Fool as well. If I can only ever have one deck, it would be this one. I talked about this Five of Cups earlier. Swords, Three of Swords, the Sun, gorgeous. And everybody's seen this deck. I don't know why I'm belaboring it. Eight of Cups, it stalked me for like a year. Gorgeous deck. This to me is the living embodiment of what a Virgo is. And like I said earlier, even though I was supposed to be born in November on Thanksgiving, I was born September 2nd. Full on Virgo. I have no other traits of anything else. Like, I'm the very image of what a Virgo is. So I found that interesting that this beautiful light earthy deck is what I chose for that. Interesting. And I find it odd because we'll get to it. So the next on the list is Libra for air. Harmony and justice. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, that will be my Sacred Rebels Oracle. It is published by Blue Angel. I think I got the boxes twisted. It is a Alana Fairchild deck. This is probably my top 5 favorite Oracle decks ever. Or you know what it is? We did a video not that long ago. There comes a great book. I saw this deck on Bahati Life's Pick a Card reading. I did not. It was by pure accident. I pulled, because she had these cards you picked a card and then whatever's below that deck, she reads everything off. And I picked this card I'm about to show you. Pure accident. All I saw was the top part of it, and I'm like, oh, that's the card I picked. It wasn't. But Spirit has its own way of tricking your mind into getting the message you need. At the time, I was just trying to figure out if I should continue writing. I had just started writing. I just started following that dream that I've had since I was 5 years old. And I had decided, I can't do this. I'm too old. And I just happened across her channel for the first time ever, happened across this card, and then she starts reading it because I didn't realize there was words at the bottom, and it is "the word wants to be written." And with the butterflies and the enlightenment going on, I started bawling my head off. I'm like, how did she know? This was the question on my mind. And then, of course, I had to track down this deck and buy it. And then almost every time I've used this deck, it has brought out some deep emotions in me. I've cried, and I don't normally cry. So I think it's fascinating, and it's so beautiful. Such a beautiful deck. That it's stuck with me for so long that it's so beautiful and so deep and fascinating. And I'm just like, what? Every time I get into this deck, I discover something new. Which is why I love it. Look at this, Come to Life. This is probably my second favorite card in there other than that one. She's painting herself to life. I'm like, what is happening? It's a gorgeous deck. And now I hear there's a Borderless Matte Edition out, which I think I found it on Blue Angel, but it's like double what I paid for this on Amazon. So I don't know that I'm going to get it yet. I want it because this is, it's one of those decks I'm going to need a copy of, a backup, because I've used it so much. So that was Libra, Harmony and Justice. And there's a justification to it every time I open that up and read it. And there's a harmony within me that takes place. And I love that about that deck. And that's why I picked that deck. So for Scorpio, water sign, which I would think that's a fire sign too. I've always thought that is a fire sign. Apparently it's a water sign. It says, who stings and who defends? And the only deck I thought of was the Sacred Creators Oracle by Chris Ann, published by Hay House. This deck is, look how beautiful. Where my Light Seers is beautiful and friendly and loves you and wants only the best things for you, this deck doesn't. This deck is like, and they smell the same. I love the way they smell. I don't know that it's a Hay House necessarily deck thing that makes it smell, because I have other Hay House decks that don't smell like these two, but they smell amazing. This deck has bit me in the ass more times than I can count. It has stung like a bee so many times, and this is why I love this deck, because where the Light Seers is sweet and nice, this one has an edge to it, and it's like, no, you're an idiot. I've been telling you for months. Now we're going to be harsh about it. And that's what I love about this deck. It's like, when you ask the same question over and over and over, it's going to give you a smart-ass answer. And I love that about this deck. It does have the same kind of backs as the Light Seers, just white. There's fewer cards because it's an oracle, but it's gorgeous. And I love the little images above. It gives you so much to work with for being something so seemingly simple. And then the coloring in it is just gorgeous. So Sacred Creators is my Scorpio. It has stung me a lot. Because I'm hard-headed and I don't listen. And this deck it cuts through all that. And it says, no, you're going to listen this time. I'm tired of telling you. So we're down to the last 4. Oh my God. It's a long video. I don't know why I said number. It's next sign is Sagittarius, a fire sign. I have my ex-best friend is a Sagittarius. I should have been born a Sagittarius. This one was controversial for me because I immediately thought of, the words are who dares. And I immediately thought of like a sexual deck. I'm like, who would dare make a sexual deck? There's some out there. I don't have any of them. I do have one that's kind of dark and twisty like that. But I chose to go another route because, and I've talked about this deck a lot lately. Maybe she's on my mind. I don't know. But my ex-best friend, she just decided one day she was no longer going to be my friend. Almost 4 years ago. I have not spoken to her since. And then this deck came into my life. Tarot of the Sweet Twilight by Los Scarabero. Christine Benetindin is the creator. I had no desire to use this deck. I still don't. And I edged it in black. But as I said, like the Light Seers was me in a deck. This is her in a deck, my ex-friend. These are all the dark and stormy parts of her. These are all the bright and light and fluffy parts of her. This deck is her in a deck. With the blue hair and the pink hair and this just crazy wildness about them, that they don't give a F about what anybody else thinks of them, what anybody else says about them. She doesn't care. And that's what I get from this deck. And that's probably why I have a hard time using it, because I see so much of her in it. But at the same time, there's this wildness and freedom to this deck that I can't, as a Virgo, go there. Because my brain has to have order. And this deck is not order. It's chaos. And I think that's more why I don't use it. But I keep it around because it reminds me of this relationship I had for the better part of 15 years. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful deck. And this was, I'm like, if I'm being honest, this is the only deck I should have chosen for Sagittarius, honestly. Yeah. That's her in a deck. And so many people out there love it. I'm like, I've been trying for almost 2 years to utilize this deck. Well, over a year now, to utilize this deck in certain ways. And it's just, I don't know. We'll see. This is the only deck I have that literally stalked me until I bought it. Like, everywhere I looked, there was this deck until I bought it. And it's coming up again lately a lot. And I'm like, huh. Wonder if it's like, you gotta work with me now. So the next one is Capricorn. The words are stability and reflection. And no offense to any Capricorns out there, it is also an earth sign, which I find interesting that my ex is an earth sign. Our daughter, the Taurus, is also an earth sign. And I'm an earth sign. I would have never guessed Capricorn as an earth sign. I would have guessed it as a water sign. It just goes to show how much I know. No offense to anybody out there. I found out a long time ago that Capricorn is one of the top 3 soulmate signs for Virgo, like compatible signs. I find that to be a lie. Because every Capricorn I've met that I've had some kind of relationship with, they're narcissistic, they're horrible people. And I'm not saying that there aren't any out there that aren't, but every Capricorn I've ever met has been a bad person. And then I did not know until I watched one of these videos that Capricorn coincides with the Devil card. And I'm like, totally makes sense. And just the fact that it's also an earthy sign kind of throws me off. I'm just like, because I would think Devil, fire. But when you go off of the words stability and reflection, there's only one deck that can be here. And I feel bad that one of my favorite decks of all time is in the Capricorn position. But I had to do it. It's the Bone Stone and Earth Flesh Tarot, because there is this deck is my stable deck. It is my reflections deck. It is the deck that I turn to for reflections and stability, and it is almost exactly the same. And that's the other thing. It's almost the exact same energy I have for my Light Series, which is my soul deck for Virgo. And this being another earthy sign makes complete sense. I just feel bad because every Capricorn I've met, total buttholes. Every one of them. And I met a few. But that is the Bone, Stone, and Earth Flesh Tarot by Evelyn Cameron. The artwork is by Anna Torian. this is my second favorite deck ever. If I could only have ever 2 decks, it would be the Light Seers in this deck, which makes sense because in this category for Capricorn, because Capricorn is supposed to be like one of the top signs compatible with Virgo. They're both Earth signs, and that maybe is the general difference here is that, yeah, that little one-off difference. Is why I feel like they're so compatible, these 2 decks compatible together. So that is my Bone, Stone, and Earth Flesh Tarot for Capricorn, stability and reflection. So we moved on to Aquarius, and I looked it up and thought this was a water, because it did say water, and I had a deck here, and then I changed it because it is an air sign, and I'm like, okay, and the words are independence and freedom, and the deck I thought of was my Line Strider Tarot, published by Llewellyn. It is by Ciolo Thompson. It was a huge book, of course. All Llewellyn books do, or decks do. The backs are beautiful. And the reason I picked this deck for my independence and freedom is because this is the only deck I have with white space like this. The only one. I have the mini version as well. But this deck makes you feel like the white space is giving them the freedom to move around. And at any moment, they're going to come to life and walk off the card. That is why I chose this deck. Because that's how I feel about this deck. And then it's got the keyword independence. I think, to me, freedom and independence is the same thing. It gives it this freedom to walk around and move off the card if it needs to, which in essence is the independence to do what they want. So that's why I chose this deck for my Aquarius deck. And it's beautiful. And this is the first one I looked up and I'm like, what are all the elements to all these signs? I have no idea what they are. So I looked up, this was the first one I looked up. And I'm like, oh wow, it's an air sign. Because I had looked it up before and looked like it was water, but it wasn't. So that is my Aquarius deck. Last sign. You guys are probably going, oh my god, she's talking forever and ever. So the last sign is Pisces. And the only keyword for this is dream. It is a water sign. I have a couple decks I could have used here, but I stuck with tarot. There's only one deck out there that could possibly be for dreams. For Pisces. And that's the Dream Keepers Tarot. This is the mass market version. It is published by, it's upside down, U.S. Games. I just did May and June card of the month, and I'm using this deck and another deck for the year ahead spread I did. This book, I don't even care if you get the deck. This book is worth it. Worth every single part of this deck alone. The deck is beautiful as well, but there are some images that are hard to take for me sometimes. The cardstock is fantastic because it's U.S. Games. They have the best cardstock for mass market. These are the backs. Pisces is my oldest son. Pisces is also my mother. Neither of us get along. My oldest is always, assuming I'm one way, and I'm not, or I'm thinking one way. My mother and I have never got along because she's crazy. And I feel bad, but my oldest does act quite a bit like my mother, who I've never had in my life, really, after I left home, because she was quite abusive growing up. My oldest son can tend to be aggressive, but because I'm the mom in the situation, I don't stand for anything abusive at all in my home. So, it took me a long time to realize, even though I didn't raise my kids around my mother, there's something hereditary there that I chose to overcome. And then my youngest is kind of acting kind of like them at times, but I'm like, no. I just can't. I can't do it again. But these are the bags. But it's funny because since I started my spiritual journey, my favorite card in here, when I first started my spiritual journey, and I pulled this deck, I bought this deck, I kept hearing I'm gathering pieces of the puzzle. I just don't have the whole picture yet. And I was like, that's crazy when I drew this card. I'm like, that's nuts. But Pisces and I don't get along normally. I do have a couple people at work that I most of the time get along with. They're the only two Pisces, and I've known quite a few Pisces in my life. The only two Pisces I've ever gotten along with more than a couple days. To be honest with. Me and, my son and I we get along for the most part just because I let a lot of stuff go because I'm the parent. I need to set the example. But he acts a lot like my mom, and I'm wondering if there's some kind of autism there that I probably should have checked into before now. But now I can't. He's 23. And he thinks it's everybody else, not him. But there's this contentious, and from what I've heard, Virgo is the exact opposite sign of Pisces. They're the two that are the direct opposites. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but I do know that Pisces and it can be a very contentious relationship. I think for the most part, and it does bother me sometimes with my buddy at work because we're really good friends. But she just has this dreamlike quality sometimes that irritates me because I'm in reality. I'm sitting here in the real world and you're talking about something that's non-existent. I can't. Sometimes there is a breakaway there, a break. But then I think maybe that's the issue I have with my son because he's always head in the clouds, and I'm like very grounded, very earth-based, very set in reality, and I just think that's the huge difference there. And I find it funny when it's my friend, but when it's my son, I have a hard time with it. But yeah, this is the deck I got for Pisces, the Dreamkeeper's Tarot, because of Dream. And it's funny because I have dreams all of the time, and then I find out from my boys, both my boys have dreams all the time. A lot of them are psychic, premonitic dreams, and I'm like, you guys need to write these down. And they're like, no, because they're terrified of them. I've learned to embrace it, but I am in my 40s, and one's a teenager and one's barely an adult. So it took me many years till I was in my 40s to come to terms with all my dreams and all these psychic things that were happening to me. So they got to do their own journey, right? I'm just there to support them if they need it. But that is the VR hashtag. Forgot it already. One deck for each sign. It's months late, and I was never going to do it, and then all of a sudden it's everywhere. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, don't hesitate to comment below. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification button so you're alerted to any future videos. And y'all have a good afternoon. Bye.